In this video, we will be discussing different types of ratios. So first, let's talk about what a ratio is. A ratio is a comparison of two different things. And there are four different ways. No, that's not right. I'm sorry. There's three different ways to write a ratio. And that would be with the word to, a colon, or a fraction. And we'll talk about some of those below. Now, ratios can either include, they'll be part to part, same set, and we'll talk about those. Part to part. I'm right in same set, and so I was there. Or part to part, different set, or part to whole, or whole to whole. And we'll go into more detail of those on the next page. So let's talk about the three different ways that we can write a ratio. And remember, if I'm going too fast for you, you are welcome to pause so that you can write things down. So you can write a ratio as a fraction. So the whole, so there's 5 total pieces that we're looking at, and 3 is the part. So anytime you've seen a fraction, it is a part to whole relationship typically. But you can write any relationship as a fraction when it's dealing with ratios. You always need to make sure that you simplify though. And you did learn some simplifying last year. We are going to go over simplifying again with some review tonight for your homework and tomorrow during class. So it says, what is the ratio of the shaded stars to all of the stars? Well, let's go through. How many shaded are there? 5. How many total are there? There's 5 shaded, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stars total. So the fraction ratio is 5/10. And if you simplify that, you could divide both the numerator and the denominator by 5. And you're left with a fraction of 1/2. You can also write a ratio with a colon, and that's those little double dots that are right there. So you write the ratio as a simplified fraction first, and then the numerator will go on the left of the colon and the denominator goes to the right. So it's kind of like you push over the fraction and the numerator comes over. So if we look at an example, it says, what is the ratio of triangles to hearts? Well, there are 4 triangles and there are 3 hearts. So as a fraction, it would be 4/3. There's no common factor between 4 and 3. So we can just write it with a colon. So it'd be 4:3. And the last way you can write a ratio is with the word to. So you would write it with the fraction first. The first item comes before the word to, and then so should we say second item after the word to. And remember, order is always important when you're doing ratios. So let's look at this example. There are 18 footballs and 10 basketballs in a ball bin. What is the ratio of basketballs to all of the balls? Well, how many basketballs are there? There are 10 total. If we add them together, there's 18 and 10, so there's 28. The fraction would be 10/28. I can simplify that because they're both even. I can divide them both by 2. And I'm left with 5/14. So 5/14 would be the simplified fraction. And if I write it with the word 2, it would be 5/2 14. And that would be the basketballs to all of the balls would be 5 to 14. So now let's talk about those part-to-part same set things. And this is on page 4. You're actually going to glue a foldable here. So there's an extra page. It looks like this. You can see it has some dotted lines on it. And you're going to fold it right here. So it's going to be a hot dog fold. It should be long and skinny. And then you're going to take a pair of scissors and you're going to cut the dotted lines all the way up to the fold. But that's as far as you're going to go. And you're going to have to do that 4 times. Don't cut the back. This does not get cut. This is where your glue is going to go when you actually glue it down onto this page. So these little flaps here should open so that you will be able to see all the information inside when you open them. So let's look at the inside. Ways to represent a ratio. So we know this is a fraction. This is the colon. And this is the word to. It's always a comparison of 2 things. It's a relationship between 2 pieces, and the order is crucial. You have to keep them in the same order, and they need to be written in simplest form. So let's look at an example of the relationships. So part to whole is the first relationship we're going to look at. So the example is how many basketballs are in the entire set of balls. A ratio can compare part of a set to the entire set in part to whole. So basketballs to the total set of balls. So it would be basketballs to all, and there would be 2 to all of them, and that would be 5. Now, if we look to part same set, and we actually have 2 part-to-parts. We have part-to-part same set and part-to-part different set, so this can get a little bit confusing. Same set says how many basketballs compared to baseballs. Well, a ratio can compare part of a set to part of the same set. So these are all the same set of the basketballs, or I'm sorry, the balls that would be in like a ball bin. I want to know basketballs to baseballs. So we're going to go basket to base. And there are 3 basketballs to 2 baseballs. And they're in the same group. Now when it's different set, they're in 2 different groups. So it's like there's 2 different bins with your balls in them. So I want to know how many basketballs in both sets. So it's the basketballs in set 1 to the basketballs in set 2. Well, there's 4 basketballs in set 1 to 2 basketballs in set 2. And if you need to, you can circle those. So it'd be 4 to 2. And you can actually simplify that if you needed to. You could divide it by 2 because they're even. And you would be left with 2 to 1 if you simplified. But 4 to 2 is perfectly acceptable. And then the last example is our whole to whole. So one whole set to another whole set. So this is set 1 with the footballs, and set 2 is the peaches. Or I'm sorry, oranges, not peaches. And it says how many footballs compared to oranges. So it would be footballs to oranges. And there are 5 footballs to 5. Sorry, that kind of looks like a 3. Oranges. So 5 to 5. And I simplified, because 5 can divide by 5, it would be a 1 to 1 relationship. So for every football you have 1 orange.